Hey, welcome to Half the Battle, and welcome back, my friends, to Main Character May,
where it's all Destro all the time.
And today we'll begin talking about the character, starting with the file cards.
And of course, the first will be the 1983 one. Now, considering how much we know about Destro nowadays, it's kinda surprising how secretive this first card is. His real name and birthplace are unknown. We do get a primary and secondary specialty, but note they're not military specialties. They're weapons manufacturer and terrorist.
Terrorist? Huh, the 80s really were a more innocent time.
Next on the card, we get another staple of G.I.Joe, though it's usually reserved for vehicles. Namely, an incredibly forced acronym, as Destro is the faceless power behind MARS. It stands for Military Armaments Research System. I mean, that is a reach even by this toyline standards.
Why have it be an acronym anyway?
MARS, the arms manufacturing company named after the Roman god of war. No need to make it more complicated than that. Considering how fond G.I. Joe is of acronyms, it still amazes me they didn't make Cobra one.
Anyway, we do get a look at his personality, or at least his philosophy.
To him, war is man's most natural state, where it's survival of the fittest and the greatest technological advances are made. That last part is true, with World War II leading to advances such as radar, space travel, and the microwave.
Though I don't think Destro was really in it to invent a better vacuum cleaner or something.
The card further says he maintains a luxurious lifestyle around the world. I think this is supposed to explain his outfit, though I don't think the preferred attire of the jet-setting 1% of the 80s was Disco Dracula. He sells weapons to basically anybody who can afford them and enters battle himself either with Cobra, as he is their main weapon supplier, or against them if that's more profitable. When going into battle, he dons his silver battle mask, as that's a family tradition.
Now that is interesting.
The first card implies he only wears the mask when going into combat, instead of wearing it all the time. This would change later on, of course. Oh, and as long as we're talking about the mask, I didn't mention it in the figure reviews, but man, that thing has got to be uncomfortable.
How hot does it get in there anyway?
After a long day wearing that, sweat socks must seem delightfully musky in comparison. The last thing the card says is that Destro respects the Joes for their skills, but abhors them for using those to maintain peace. So he's dedicated to destroying, or at least undermining them. As an aside, the text actually has the word abhor on it, which could have easily been the words hates or dislikes.
Larry Hama didn't shy away from using more unusual terms.
He was hoping that any child who didn't know what they meant would look it up or ask their parents. An interesting tidbit about the card itself is that on the 1983 and 1984 cards, the G.I. Joe logo is underneath his portrait, even though, as the last paragraph clearly points out,
he ain't a Joe.
The 1985 card does have the Cobra logo though. I think this was done to show he was a figure from the G.I. Joe toy line, but separate from Cobra, only for that to be dropped in 85. Kinda like how the cartoon theme song changed from G.I. Joe against Cobra and Destro to Cobra the Enemy. Overall, I really like this card. It tells you enough about Destro while still keeping plenty of mysteries that could be revealed at a later date.
And revealed they would be on the second file card.
Version 2, aka Iron Grenadier Destro's card, does tell us much more. First and foremost, we learn his real name, James McCullen Destro. Meaning that Destro wasn't a code name, but his actual last name. What is it with the bad guys just using their real names all the time?
Honestly, I'm not too fond of this revelation.
Destro is just the word destroy with the Y taken off, and makes for a cool code name. Having it retroactively be his real name has the same feel to me like trying to justify the MARS acronym. There just wasn't any reason for it. Still, Destro he was, and Destro he would remain. The second piece of new information is we find out where he's from, namely Callander, Scotland.
And yes, I did have to look that up, but it does really exist. Scotland is a real place.
Yeah, I'm kidding, but I did have to look up Callander, and it's a real town that's existed for centuries. It doesn't seem to have a history with arms manufacturing though. Anyway, the third piece of new information, and indeed a change for the character, is that he's now the leader of the Iron Grenadiers in addition to being a weapons manufacturer.
This is expanded upon in the body of text itself.
It seems he's no longer Cobra's weapon supplier, but now pursues his own diabolical aims. He uses his small army of Iron Grenadiers to incite unrest in unstable countries so he can create a market for his weapons. As his influence grows, he now dreams the dreams that Cobra Commander once dreamed.
So what, world domination? That's a bit much.
The second paragraph of the card is solely dedicated to explaining why he's got a bucket on his head. Hey, it's a very nice looking bucket, but still. It seems weapon selling has been the Destro family business a very, very long time. So long in fact that the Destro who started the family's fortune was caught selling weapons to both sides in the English Civil War. Cromwell's men caught him and made him wear an uncomfortable steel mask as punishment. They didn't kill him because they kinda still needed his weapons. Ever since then, the Laird of Clan Destro has worn one as a badge of honor.
Okay, there's a few things to clarify here.
There have been quite a few English civil wars, the War of the Roses to name just one, but only one actually called that, and it was between Oliver Cromwell and the Royalists. Also, using the word laird here is Larry Hama being clever, as that is the proper Scottish word, the equivalent of a lord.
In the sense that a laird is the owner of a large estate.
Now, you might think, and it's a reasonable assumption, that the whole Iron Mask thing was probably inspired by the Man in the Iron Mask.
Which would be ironic, since the actual historical person that was based on didn't actually wear an iron mask, merely a veil to cover his face.
The iron part was added later by Voltaire for dramatic effect, I guess. Also, the veil wasn't a punishment, it was most likely used to hide his identity.
Or maybe he was thought to be unnecessarily ugly at the time, who knows?
So, since this mask wasn't a punishment, it's not where the inspiration for Destros came from.
That's not to say iron masks weren't used as a form of punishment, and it's far more horrific and misogynistic than you'd think, because that past was awful.
It was called a Scold's Bridle, or Branks, and was invented in Scotland. Yeah, see how already it goes back to Destro? It was a mask with a bridle that went inside the mouth to press down on the tongue, leaving the wearer unable to speak. For added horror, that bit often had a spike on it. Oh, and in the vast majority of cases, it was used on women. And for what crime, you may ask?
Talking too much. No, I'm not kidding. This isn't me making a dumb sexist joke like, women, am I right? That really happened.
This thing, which had a spike on it for the tongue, I remind you, was often used at the request of husbands or other family members on women who gossiped, argued, or nagged too much.
Let that sink in. Yeah, maybe we should all spend some time screaming into a pillow right now.
And it was also punishment for witchcraft, because of course it was. While women were the primary victims of this punishment, history has recorded it being used on men on occasion, especially those convicted of slander. I couldn't find anything about arms dealing though. So yeah, enjoy this toy, kids, just don't ask too many questions about the mask.
And I thought that Pimp Daddy talk last week got awkward.
Moving hastily on, this card represents a changing character for Destro, as he now has his own faction. Hasbro wanted a third faction, or a fourth, depending on how you see Zartan and the Dreadnoks, to antagonize both the Joes and Cobra, and Destro was happy to oblige.
Hasbro even advertised this in a truly epic commercial.
Tired of the fanatical ravings of Cobra Commander and Serpentor, Destro goes in alone.
Destro's back on the attack, out to conquer the world on his own!
Leading Destro's army is the anti-gravity pod, the HEP.
Who needs Cobra? With my demon and the Iron Grenadiers, neither Joe nor Cobra are a match for me.
Yo, Joe!
Nobody beats G.I.Joe, the real American hero!
Can Destro's army destroy Joe and Cobra? Find out at Marvel Comics.
This file card reflects that by calling him the enemy under his picture. While the Iron Grenadiers were great, they were gone by the time the next figure came out, so that file card makes no mention of them anymore. The card mentions Destro and the Commander hate each other, but maintain an alliance of convenience, even though Destro is much smarter.
Oh, and he has a motto now.
If I didn't sell weaponry, somebody really evil would be doing it.
Yeah, keep telling yourself that, buddy.
The last card of the original line is the Armor Tech one, and explains how he got it, namely by attacking a G.I.Joe base and stealing the plans for it. The most significant thing here is that this attack led to a Joe being almost fatally injured, who then needed experimental cybernetics to survive, thus creating Robo-Joe.
making Destro history's greatest monster.
And those were the file cards from the original line. Now, when it comes to the modern figures and their cards,
I'm gonna be a lot more brief,
since most of them don't add much or are just straight up copies of the originals. I will point out anything I feel is significant though. The 1997 one, which was written by fans for Hasbro, recaps some of the comic character's history, so I won't get into it here. The significant bit, apart from the fact that they misspelled his name as James McMullen Destro, is that he's the 17th layered Destro, making him James McCullen Destro the 17th. The weird thing about that is that the next file card from 2001 has him being Destro the 24th.
so he gained like 7 ancestors in 4 years.
The 24th was used the most on future file cards. In 2002, Destro had 3 different figures, and it seems they did an oopsie on the first card. Like version 1, his speciality was terrorist. This was shortly after 9/11, so that word had gotten much darker, and they quietly changed it to thief from then on.
The later file cards basically just regurgitate info from the previous ones,
with the modern construction ones being carbon copies of the first, though still with the word terrorist changed to thief. Personally, if they were willing to change that, they should have also just put his name on there instead of keeping it unknown like version 1. The exception to all of this was the rise of Cobra card, which explains his silver mask was created by nanites repairing burn injuries on his face.
Cause we really needed an additional reason for the mask, I guess.
And those were the file cards. We've certainly gotten to know Destro a little better that way, but it's nothing compared to what's in other media.
Next week, we'll be looking at those. Well, I'll see you next time, everybody. And hey, why not like, share, and subscribe if that's your thing?
He's a terrifying enemy of G.I.Joe. Destro is his name. Destro is his name.